And welcome to the Sports Roundup here at Irie on the Square. Another beautiful Monday here in Oxford. And, man, high school football was just past weekend. We got college football kicking off this weekend. The NFL is here. And, man, it's just another exciting night here at Irie as we get set to bring you another Sports Roundup. We got the panel here tonight. We got the old coach, Chick Drewrey, joining us tonight, along with the official Fred Johnson and the color analyst down there, Keith Patterson. And Chick, I'll go ahead and start with you. We just had Coach Brad Embry from Water Valley on a couple weeks ago, and you got to go down there and watch him pretty much just destroy a Coffeyville team.
Well, it's one of those situations where at the end you're just wondering how long Coffeyville's going to keep playing the way Water Valley's got it rolling right now.
And Fred, I know you're an official, so you were on the field this past Friday night.
I've been on the field every Friday night, man. It's been an exciting 2 Friday nights. We've had some good calls. We've had some bad calls. Been a lot of controversy these first 2 weeks, and we hope to get things online and move forward with it.
Because I know you were the official in that 63-0 game this past weekend with Water Valley.
Oh, man, you know how it is when you're in a game like that. You want to get it over. You have kids getting hurt. And we had to call back a couple of touchdowns. But Water Valley kids played the whole game. And that
played hard.
Played hard the whole game.
And Keith Patterson and I were in Greenwood this weekend for the second consecutive week. The Lafayette Commodores just totally dominate their opponent.
Yeah, we're hoping this week in the Crosstown Classic, maybe a little competition, obviously with the rival game. But, you know, I'm excited to go over that, maybe talk about the 1 and 2 teams in the state after South Panola got beat, you know.
That's what we're going to bring up just
maybe
a little
I got
later.
a little bragging rights on the board since somebody on this panel, I don't want to call out any names, stepped up before the season started and said he believed that Lafayette was the best team in the state. That might be true.
I'm telling you now, with South Panola taking one on the chin at Hoover and possibly falling out of the #1 spot, we don't know. But, hey, we're here at Irie. We've got a good guest fixing to join us here, the longtime voice of the Lady Rebels. Gary Darby is going to be joining us here in just a few minutes, and now he is on Reb Sports Radio 102.1 here in Oxford, and we're going to talk to Gary just a little bit about everything going on. The Ole Miss Rebels getting ready to kick off this weekend against BYU in what is a huge, huge game for the Rebels. So we're going to take a break, grab something to eat. We'll be right back with more Sports Roundup from Irie right here on the Square.
For over 25 years, property owners and lawn care professionals have been turning to one mower.
Dave and I have been using these mowers on our properties for years.
You got that right, Harold. Built to last, a Skag is the only mower I'll ever own.
Skag zero-turn mowers cuts our mowing time in half.
Plus, it gets us out of the yard and into the woods for that precious hunting time. With a Skag mower, you can count on high quality, productivity, and value for a lifetime.
Skag, proudly made in the USA by people who hunt and fish just like you.
The letter X. It's one tough letter, and the only one that stands for something. It's the mark of the unknown factor. The spot of the buried treasure. The model of rugged beauty. But what really sets it apart is its power to multiply. Everything.
We got to be pretty good friends that summer. We, hung out pretty much every day.
We worked together all summer and got to be really good friends, and through that process of us getting to be good friends, I think I just started to have a little crush on him. And
funny story, I guess her car broke down at the beginning of the summer, and so we lived pretty close to each other, so she had to have a ride. So that's kind of how especially how we got to know each other, is just through riding to work and from work together.
And he kind of approached me one night and said, "Look, this is the way I feel about you." And so that's kind of how the whole process began.
The way we went about it was I prayed about it for a little bit, just because I thought it was important to have her dad, as a part of our relationship. And so I went and talked to her dad about some things.
And then we prayed about it again for about another week, and then he went and talked to my dad again.
We sat down and had a little bit of a 2-week kind of sit down, pray about it, think about it, and kind of did that for about 2 weeks.
Ben would always take me on theme dates, like they were never just a boring date.
On our first date, we went to a restaurant in Jackson called Fertizzi's.
He's Italian, and he got it to go, and he took me to
a park that was nearby, and I had a little picnic set up out there kind of at night, and we just hung out there. The park looked out over the reservoir, and so we just hung out there. And
it was just really sweet. I thought it set a really good precedence for the rest of our relationship. It's not just a mundane, normal, boring relationship. So that was our first date.
And welcome back to the Sports Roundup here at Irie on the Square. Another big night, getting ready for some Monday night football here on one of the big TVs they've got. They got TVs all over the place, so come up here on Monday nights and watch some NFL football. And Keith Patterson, Fred Johnson, Ronnie Williams here. Chick Drewrey will be right back with us, the old coach. Joined now by Gary Darby. And Gary, good to have you here. And we'll go ahead and kind of throw it out there, let everybody know from 2 to 4 on every Monday through Friday, 102.1. Gary Darby's back on the air in Oxford.
That's right. Also in Grenada, if you're around that area, 101.3, even in Jackson on AM 1240. So it's good to be back, but it's even better to be surrounded by the greatness here at the table. It's just amazing to be here with you guys.
Well, you know,
let me look.
Who's he talking about, Fred?
I was really asking him not to drink before he came in, but I guess that's too late now. But, hey, Gary, and right now on 102.1, you're also doing the Oxford High football, and you've had a chance to follow those guys for a couple weeks, and we've got a big game coming up this weekend.
I'm excited about that. It's been a while since I've been with the old Crosstown Classic, and I've seen, Lafayette have their run. I watched Oxford, when they made a stretch, and now it's Lafayette all over again. This Oxford team is young, on that offensive line, and they're still learning, and there's a lot of false starts, and there's a lot of holding penalties, and there's a lot of things. But that will come, and they'll get better with that. But it's a big test for them this week, without a doubt, on Friday night.
Well, let's take a look this past weekend. They played at Charleston, and I heard you say it was a marathon game. But just other than that, the Adamson kid at quarterback, and so some of the other players. Kind of tell us about who to look for. Of course, Keith and I do Lafayette, so we know Lafayette. Give us some names for Oxford.
Parker Adamson got much better from game 1 to game 2, and that's what you're looking for in a coach and in a high school. He made some beautiful passes, and he's got Stan Ivey to throw it to, and Tola Presley. I'm going to tell you now, if there is a punting situation for Lafayette, watch that kid, because he can do some special things with it back there. So he's got weapons. There's a Liggins on the outside for him to throw it to. And they use the tight end a lot with Xavier Pegues. And Johnny likes to go to the tight end in crucial situations. If you're playing Oxford, you better look for number 44, because he's probably going to get the ball.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that Johnny does good, and I've told folks, be careful what you predict this weekend, because Johnny Hill's going to pull a few tricks out of the sleeve, but he runs a pro-style offense. And one of the complaints I talk about sometimes on the show is I don't think enough high school coaches do that in the state of Mississippi. So they're going to present a challenge to Lafayette. We saw Lafayette come out against Greenwood last week, and while the score indicates 42-0, Greenwood still had some opportunities to make some big plays in the passing game. Came out, their quarterback was 8 for 12 to start the game, made a couple throws that should have been easy touchdowns for Greenwood. Ended up being deflections and interceptions and touchdowns for Lafayette. So there's some weaknesses in that secondary that I think Johnny Hill will expose, and throwing to the tight end is one of those.
Well, he'll try, that's for sure, because they will have studied film to do whatever they can find. There was one thing that I did notice in the game against Charleston. Charleston came out usually a running team, right? And I'm going to go from the defensive side of things. They ran. Well, they come out, they start to pass, catches Oxford off guard. Well, when Charleston finally got into that running situation, they didn't go anywhere. So the point that you make is this: the Johnny Hill team is going to be well coached. Are they talented enough is the question. And they do have some weapons. And I think I failed to mention Mont Dean, a running back that's gone over 100 yards both times. He's hard to bring down.
I think when you look at the Crosstown Classic, though, when you're talking about talent, you can almost throw talent out the window, because the emotion, the rivalry itself, and usually the team that lower rank come in competitive. Lafayette probably have an added thing on them this week, because with South Panola getting beat, there are some people probably think that they're number 1 in the state. And, it's always good to play against the number 1 team, because, to knock off the number 1 team, where did it put you?
Well, you're exactly, because they have an 18-game winning streak going on now. That's the longest in the state. So who would rather end that winning streak than Oxford? And I know at practice today that probably was talked about with Oxford. It'll be talked about all the way leading up to the game.
One of the things I like to look at is, and me, I like to see the game played at the end of the season, and you know, playing in the third or fourth game of the season, it's still the Crosstown Classic. It's still one of the biggest rivalries of the season for both teams, even though one's 5A, one's 4A. But I like to see it at the end of the season where there's something, you know, you win your region, you come in second, whatever. I know Johnny Hill and Anthony Hart both look at it as a huge game. Neither one of them want to lose, but you've been around it long enough. Where do you see the game kind of fitting in the schedule? Do you like it at the end of the season?
I want it at the end.
Yeah.
It's always been the best. Now, they can't do that now, I guess, being in different classifications. But I think what so many schools do in these first four, and I know in talking with Johnny, I mean, he scheduled Grenada, who's an athletic, very good team. Charleston's a very good team. Lafayette obviously is one of, if not the best team playing in the state right now. And so it's to get him prepared for his district. Well, that takes away so much to me of Oxford versus Lafayette, because that's not what it is to me. It is what you're talking about at the end of the year. No matter what the records are, play it, have fun, and those times where it kept somebody from going to the playoffs, or winning the North half or something like that.
Yeah, I can actually remember some nights when it was pouring down rain and 0-0 tie. I mean, you know, the last game of the season, the last place you want to be is in a rainstorm in the last game of the year.
Yeah, and I'm going to take a different perspective. I'm not for Oxford, so the Crosstown Classic doesn't have quite the same feeling for me. I like the game being early in the season for that exact reason. You know you're going to get good weather. You know, sometimes you get a game at the end of October, 1st of November, like you said. All of a sudden, weather can really dictate and throw a cramp into whether one team is better or not. You can have a lot of turnovers. It can be a sloppy game. I like where it is. I like the third game of the season. You know, I think also, though, being in two different regions, if they were in the same region, I would say let's put it at the end of the season. But I think it's a good test for both schools going in early in the season to find out where they are compared to the goals of where they want to be at the end of the year.
Because I would prefer probably to be a kickoff classic. You know, since both teams are in different divisions, you know, 4A and 5A, and the game doesn't mean anything. I mean, it means something, you know, for this crosstown rivalry stuff. I'd like to see us, you know, really promote that game to be an opening season game. I think it get all of the impact. You know, teams hadn't lost a game. They're all undefeated. I mean, it'd mean a whole lot more than if you played at the beginning of the game or if you played the last of the season and they were playing in the same division.
I agree with that. If it's not going to be at the end, I would rather it be the very first one. Get fired up for that one, play that one, and not in the third week.
Well, there's been times that it's been played the first game of the season, you know. So I mean, it's bounced around the scheduling, but it's still, you know, these guys look at it as one of the biggest rivals in the state of Mississippi. The book that came out a couple of years ago, as a matter of fact, did have it as one of the biggest games in the state of Mississippi. But Gary, from your perspective of calling Oxford the last 2 weeks, and I'm sure you haven't seen Lafayette other than reading about them, but Lafayette's just got a dominating defense. They've got a dominating offense. If you're the coach for Oxford Chargers, what are you going to do to try to beat the Commodores?
I don't, you know, not having seen Lafayette, that's kind of hard. But I think the team's strengths are playing each other. You know, I think the best thing Oxford has is offense. So that's kind of scary, you know, that Lafayette has such a strong defense, and then, you know, the offense trying to stop Liggins and for Oxford. Of course, I said last week that Oxford should run the ball and shorten the game up against Charleston, and we had a 45-minute first quarter because both teams were throwing it all over the place every down. But I think they need to do that again. I think they need to just pound Montdean, and he can run it all night long, and just continue doing that because the offensive line is getting better. They've got good size. It's young kids. Tyrone Atkins is 6'7", 330 pounds or somewhat on the right side. They'll line it up and go behind him over and over again, and I think he'll do that. But you made the point. Johnny's going to do some things you don't expect, and so there's going to be some trick, something that's going to throw up in there to try and get an edge. I think they need that.
Yeah, I think that's a good game plan to try to pound it and shorten the game, keep the offense of Lafayette off the field. The only problem is don't become so one-dimensional because we know this. If you get behind on Lafayette and you try to run it the first few times and it doesn't work and all of a sudden they get up a couple of touchdowns, they really can bring the pressure, put a lot of pressure on the quarterback. So, but you know, I think Montdean is a big factor in the game. I think Montdean is a guy that can move the chains. He's a strong running back. I've seen him play a couple of times. As you said, he went over 100 yards in both games this year. So if Montdean can give them just a little bit of running where Lafayette has to kind of game plan around it, it's going to open up some things. But if Montdean cannot run the football like Shumpert couldn't for Tupelo,